All right, well, my name is Emily Cole. I'm a PA in Western North Carolina, specifically in Asheville, and the title of my project is Heart Strive. You can go to the next slide. Every 36 seconds, someone in the United States dies from a heart attack or cardiovascular disease. And a lot of you are well aware of the problem of heart disease within the United States, with over 800,000 patients or people a year having a cardiac event. But of those people, 200,000 of them, this won't be the first time that they've had this experience. Next slide. And over the past 18 months, we've been dealing with another horrific health crisis, which was COVID-19. And this has pushed us to the limit, or potentially past our limit, or what we thought was our limit. And in many capacities, our patience, our strength, our gumption for educating the community, our compassion, our drive. And we've cultivated a new way of reaching those in need and unearthed a new sense of investment into the foundational self, our whole self. And we've done that on the most basic principles. And so from the ashes, I think our use of technology has birthed new possibility of access through virtual care. And as you all mentioned in the introduction, I'm a cardiology PA. I work inpatient as well as outpatient. I see people coming in with acute coronary syndrome or ACS almost every day. And on the outpatient side, I often see those patients in follow-up after their hospitalization. And one of my goals at that point in time is to get them involved in cardiac rehabilitation. But the question remains, will we use the technological advances that we have gained through this learning process of COVID-19, will we use it to its full potential? Next slide, please. Many of you are probably pretty familiar with cardiac rehabilitation. It's a scientifically proven rehab program that typically lasts several months at a time. And a lot of times people are going to this 2 to 3 times a week. It's indicated for patients who have had recent ACS, revascularization, stable angina, systolic heart failure, among other indications. And why do we care about it? Why is it such a big deal? Well, because it has been proven to improve survival in patients who are post-PCI or bypass. It's helped improve compliance with secondary prevention medications. It helps control symptoms and decreases risk of sudden cardiac death or reinfarction, among other benefits. And so this was a pretty big deal. When I talked to my patients most recently over the past year to 18 months about cardiac rehab, they were very hesitant about participating. And many of them for a while cited COVID-19 as being why they did not want to participate, because they were afraid of exposure and their own health risk. But as the peak has somewhat passed at this point, I realized that there was still hesitancy in my own patients getting involved in cardiac rehab. And I was wondering, was this a new problem? Or had it potentially been there from the start? You can go to the next slide. And so I began to ask patients, okay, well, why don't you want to go to cardiac rehab? And so some people still cited the pandemic as a reason they did not want to participate at this point in time. But more often than not, they would say, Emily, I'm a single mom and I have 2 jobs and 3 kids, and I live an hour away, and there's no way that I have the time, energy, or effort to come to cardiac rehabilitation 3 times a week. Maybe it's they live an hour or 2 away. We're kind of the heart care in Western North Carolina, and they drive quite a ways to come to our clinic for care. And that's a potential barrier as well. Like I said, they have to have multiple jobs. They don't have insurance, or perhaps they don't have the transportation that they need in order to get to the clinic for that to happen. In our meeting about social determinants of health, I started to look at the surrounding counties that we serve, as well as Buncombe County, the county that we're located in. And I started to wonder if there could be a more effective alternative for the problems that we've been facing. And I was seeing a lot of the problems that were not being addressed, secondary to lifestyle intervention from these patients. And those were the exact problems that a lot of cardiac rehab programs address. Next slide. And you can click. And that's why I created a powerhouse resource online that's evidence-based, it's easily understood. It's called HeartStride, and it's essentially a really great landing zone for information that patients can trust that will help move them to a more heart-healthy position. You can go to the next slide. And so what I did essentially was I went through a lot of research looking at the secondary prevention recommendations set forth by the American College of Cardiology, the AHA, the ESC, and I married that along with the pillars of lifestyle medicine. And Dr. Quill spoke about this yesterday. That includes nutrition, physical activity, sleep, stress reduction, social connectedness, and avoidance of risky behaviors, because a lot of those are implemented within the lifestyle recommendations set forth by those trusted organizations in their lifestyle recommendations. So the methods that I include were essentially a lot of research. A lot of research went into this and what the recommendations were and what resources we had available online and locally to mitigate this problem. The other thing that I used, I would like to take a moment to thank the wise teacher of trial and error, because I am not a website designer, but I had to quickly become one because I knew that this needed to get into the hands of a lot of people pretty quickly. And so that was one of the major hurdles that I had with this project. You can go to the next slide. So this is not a replacement for all of the wonderful evidence-based resources we already have. This is, like I said, a landing zone of sorts that incorporates all of them and puts them with that evidence-based backing and in a way that people can understand it. This is the nutrition landing page for one of the pillars that I was discussing. This is what the website looks like on the nutrition side. You have guidelines, you have recipes, local resources, and online resources. Next slide. On your left, you'll see, if you click on the dietary guidelines, you'll see us explaining to patients, what are the dietary guidelines? Why are they important? Who makes them? Where do they come from? What is a heart-healthy diet anyway? And there's this confusion about what's healthy and what isn't when we have all of this in the media about what we should be doing with our diets. The data is pretty clear across the medical community, and I don't think that the medical community in general is confused about that. And so we go into that and we talk about it. On the local resources page, we include ways for this to be tangible for patients. This includes links from local organizations that have already put this list together of local farmers markets that you can get fresh food from. It includes which farmers markets include SNAP and EBT points, which ones you can get double points at, and transit resources on how you can actually get there. You can go to the next slide. And you can click. And then under the online resources under nutrition, you see that we have plant-based diet handouts that I've used in clinic that have been extremely helpful. We have meal planners. We also have apps that you can download. This includes the Daily Dozen app, which I'm a huge fan of. That includes how are we counting our daily servings for fruits and vegetables that Dr. Quill talked about yesterday that can contribute to avoiding so many chronic diseases. MyFitnessPal, food journals that can be really helpful for patients. You can go to the next slide. I implemented this as well under physical activity, another pillar of lifestyle medicine. We talk about the guidelines, where you can get fitness trackers, which ones do what, local involvement, how you can get involved locally to continue to make this a sustainable change, not just something that you do for a couple of months, but something that you can do for your whole entire life. Home exercise resources, understanding the importance of metabolic equivalents. And one of the caveats one of the things I wanted to point out about the physical activity is the importance of speaking with your provider, especially if you're a post-ACS patient, whether it's a virtual appointment or an in-person appointment, the importance of making the contact with your trusted provider so that you can be sure that you're starting physical activity in a safe manner. Next slide, please. And you can click. The next is avoidance of risky behaviors. I focus specifically on smoking cessation because in the surrounding counties, this is what was really important I divided this into pharmacotherapy and non-pharmacotherapy. If you click on pharmacotherapy, you're going to find a lot of other resources that tell you the use, advantages, disadvantages, precautions, and side effects of nicotine replacement therapy and non-nicotine replacement therapy. You can go to online resources and you can find resources that include Quitline North Carolina Web Coach, a guide to quitting that they can fill out, and a quit plan for them to select a quit date. Going back to the main page, you can scroll down again and scroll over to include telephone resources. These include telephone numbers that you can call, quit lines. You can now text those for more information, as well as mobile apps that are free for the patient. And another thing that I'm pretty proud of is included in this is a way for people to obtain nicotine replacement therapy at low or no cost to them. Next slide. Other pillars of lifestyle medicine that will be included eventually in this is sleep, stress reduction, and social connectedness. There have been studies linking insomnia to increased cardiovascular risk, and so it's incredibly important that we focus on sleep. I will say probably at least once or twice a week as an outpatient, I discuss anxiety and depression with patients. In fact, it's a 2A recommendation to screen for depression post-MI or bypass surgery for patients. It's an extremely common phenomenon. In fact, 27% of patients could identify a psychosocial trigger for their event, and risk for depression is 3 times greater than the general population. So this is an extremely important thing that we address. Next slide, please. One thing I did want to say about that last slide is I think it's important to give patients permission to recognize the link between their psychological and their physical health. The potential impacts of this is groundbreaking. I want to make an emphasis on changing our focus from just putting a Band-Aid on things, including only pharmacologic therapy, which is extremely important, by the way. This isn't to discount that. And I wanted to make the connection between just an online click and getting people involved in their local community, again, to make it a sustainable resource for them. Access is access. It's all about that. And importantly, this is an opportunity for improved health literacy from a reliable source. In the future, this would be a really great app. It's just that apps are very expensive to develop, and that was not really in the cards for this project at this point in time, but my hope is that that is something that we could do in the future. And this isn't a cardiac rehab currently, but I do anticipate that this could potentially be a full-fledged virtual cardiac rehab. Certainly, further studies are warranted on the impact and implications for reduced cardiovascular morbidity and mortality and risk for rehospitalization post-event in virtual cardiac rehab settings. And that is my project. And thank you so much to everybody who's helped me along the way. And I'm free to take any questions.